Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tactical Scrubs podcast. I'm Dean Malpass, joined today as ever. I don't know what I would do if she wasn't by my side. Mel Cortez. Mel, great to have you.
Your life would probably be a lot less jumbled up.
Welcome to Tactical Scrubs. Each episode, we explore the latest healthcare trends, share practical tips, and chat with industry leaders to help you navigate the complexities of modern healthcare. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just curious, we've got you covered. Let's dive in.
Like where I text you at 4 a.m. I'm like, hey, by the way, what do you think about this? And he's like, are you kidding me? It's 4 a.m. over here. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Love it.
I forgot.
Yeah, never felt more alive. Yeah, long may it continue. Long may this reign of international transatlantic terror.
Any of my ex-husbands would ever say that. They're like, Mel is the most difficult thing we've ever dealt with. So you're just a mental health nurse, so you can deal with it.
I take on the jobs other people don't want, and I've made a career out of it. So there we go. So we teased it on the last.
That's what talking about, right? That's what we were talking about. Is like when we're consulting, I love to work with a client who's like, I am hemorrhaging money, and we have to fire the entire C-suite, and blah blah blah. And we come in and we're like, wait a minute. Like you have patience, you have profit. So like, let's just figure out how we navigate that. And again, here we are saying a whole bunch of things that other people are thinking and nobody else wants to say it. So
you wrote a banger. I think is probably the place to start. So you wrote an article taking aim at the concept of zero tolerance.
Let's clarify. Wait a minute. I wasn't taking aim. Like, okay, first of all, if Mel was
it was in your sights.
If Mel was at things, they would just disappear. Like everyone who knows me seen me at the range. Everybody who knows seen me at the range. I'm very qualified, okay? So let's just talk about that. So I wasn't taking aim. I think that I truly believe that the best way for me to help my colleagues, like these little nursing students that are coming out of school and are all zealous and really excited, is to help the organizations and genuinely help them. I want to see good organizations be profitable. I would love to see HCA be profitable at whatever 14 billion in revenue or whatever they're at and have exceptional care. And I believe that that's possible because I've seen it in facilities like Massachusetts General, Hopkins, University of Maryland, Georgetown. Like I've been to these organizations that do run themselves fairly well, have a good profit margin, and also have excellent care and excellent caregivers, and people want to work there. So it's hard for you to tell me that things that are out there are applicable because it's not that I'm taking aim at things. It's that I want the best for organizations. I want to see them be successful because ultimately that helps my profession.
I mean, I believe you, but I think many wouldn't in this case. But what was it?
I think that I was attacking it or coming at it to be controversial, but I really don't care. Honestly, I don't care if people agree with me or not. It's just the truth. And it's the truth from a security standpoint. Like if we look at, so the article was about zero tolerance.
Yeah, let's see. What was it? Let's go back from the beginning. Tell us what you said and why.
Okay,
and I'm just going to listen and enjoy.
The American Nurses Association. I'm going to take a deep breath. No, I'm kidding. The American Nurses Association sent out a call for input on their workplace violence stance that they're going to put out. And in it, they put, we have zero tolerance or no tolerance for any type of violence in the healthcare environment. And to me, as somebody who has spent the last 5 years studying security and violence and put in my range time, put in my time on the mat, put in my time with the officers, and has learned, I think, a very small percentage of security knowledge and understanding, very small, and put that towards the care and application that I have from my nursing degree and from the oath that I took as a nurse, and kind of smash those two things together And that's what leads me to believe that zero tolerance for violence is a terrible idea and a not great policy for strategy of longevity. And if in a national organization that's supposed to represent all of our nurses, even though like it's less than like 10% of the nurses, I think it's like less than 5% of the nurses in the US actually belong to the American Nurses Association. So I think that that's just a PR problem and they just need better marketing. And like, you know, it's not anything to do with the fact that they're not doing impactful things. It's just the bedside nurses don't understand what an organization is for and what it's supposed to do, because they don't understand business and business laws and the things that their hands are tied. So a position statement is really powerful for a profession. It can dictate the way in which chief nursing officers around the country man their workplace violence boards. So it's not just, oh, we're going to throw up a position statement. Like, it can be seen as a pinnacle with which people build their workplace violence program on. And that's why it has to be founded in security concepts and security basics. And when you look at security as an absence of threat, you are not looking at security. You're looking at this fantasy land. Security and people who do security and safety well are constantly thinking everything is a threat. Everything could be a potential threat. And that's risk management. That's threat management, right? That's proactively avoiding an incident. If you are taking the perspective that you don't tolerate it, but you're still taking care of human beings who have the capability to hit someone or to perpetrate a verbal slur or to, throw urine at you. You are now putting your organization as a whole in a place that says, we don't tolerate it, but we're also not going to address it, because in this document, we're saying that we're not going to place blame on ourselves because we don't tolerate it. Well, it isn't a strategy or a ideal recommendation towards reducing the violence, because first of all, you're not even acknowledging the violence. And what they're saying in that document is essentially going against our code of ethics. So when I look at a solution for an organization, like if they say to me, if you're a CEO of an organization and you say, well, Mel, everybody else has zero tolerance policies and the ANA has it in their position statement and, other organizations use it, my answer to you is still, just because other people are doing it doesn't make it sustainable or right for an organization. And if you want to have any type of sustainability in operations, you are not going to impact or put in a zero tolerance policy, because it doesn't allow you to do anything on the security side to protect your organization. And also it creates a greater divide, because ultimately you, because of EMTALA, are not going to turn away a patient who's violent. So you're not going to say to that patient that has a traumatic brain injury because they were just in a motor vehicle crash and now they don't have, the use of their frontal lobe, so they have no inhibition. So anytime someone enters the room and they're frightened, they're going to strike or they're going to perpetrate, they could become violent. Now, are you telling this patient and their family that you can't care for them because you have a zero tolerance policy? If you decide to remain caring for the patient, you're telling your nursing staff now, well, because we have a zero tolerance policy and we just don't deal with the violence, we don't have a good strategy to deal with it when it happens.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I always dislike about zero tolerance, sexually speaking. It's that it ends up being an empty threat that then has the opposite impact. Because once the healthcare staff and structures know that there's actually very little you can do after it's happened. So yes, prosecution is possible, but it's labor intensive. It's labor intensive, and I've successfully had patients prosecuted in criminal court for assaulting my staff. But I'm probably not your average nurse manager, and I kind of knew the way that the legal system worked. But even still, we're talking 3 out of hundreds. So it's labor intensive. It's not probable. And ultimately, if you've got people that then need to be in the healthcare system one way or another, they're coming back. particularly in a behavioral health, mental health setting, ER type settings, it's really hard to bar people from healthcare services. So ultimately, what I think, the reason why I don't like zero tolerance as a concept in this approach is that the staff who want to feel emboldened and safe by these policies see the inaction, so they lose faith in the system. And any element of deterrent that you were hoping for as a behavioral modifier for people that are violent or aggressive in healthcare settings, go through the process once, see that nothing happened, and then you've lost any deterrence factor as well. So you've ended up with two key stakeholders in this, both ostracized from the thing that you're trying to say is the solution. So to me, I always think avoid the hyperbole and take a pragmatic approach. And invest in things like training and leadership and good systems.
Moving towards zero incidents. Now, Dennis Himes, who is from Memorial Hermann and was, the former head of the Houston IHSS, won Chapter of the Year this year. Excellent resource, great. Talks about moving towards a zero incident, which is great. Yeah. Like, we know that there's going to be incidents where people are violent or people are frustrated or people are sick or people are emotional. And we don't want to have a place where we don't tolerate that behavior from you, John. So you can't act that way, but we're not ready to discharge John yet. So that's not a way to deal with John. In fact, the way to deal with John would be to come up with a systemized approach to that type of behavior and help him organize his behaviors and say, obviously, John, we're treating the patient behind the behaviors. There is a person on the other side. And that's why when I looked at, okay, how can for me in a security role, in a security, heavy industry, right? I don't say I'm a security expert because I'm not. I'm a healthcare safety and maybe workforce expert, but I don't know security. I don't claim that, okay? But I do know enough conceptually to know that not identifying threats is not a way to make your hospital or your healthcare organization secure. So from a security foundational principle, it's not founded in anything within the safety or security industry. Okay, zero tolerances. If we look at nursing, so now I have to take a group of nurses who are very qualified, educated, academic, and director level executive nurses at the ANA and try and teach them security principles and then try and correlate. That takes an extreme amount of time. So I was like, look, I could write some article series to talk about in the beginning how it directly negates our code of ethics. If you look at the nursing code of ethics from the American Nurses Association, each provision, there's direct incidences where zero tolerance and the concept of zero tolerance does not meet those. And one of those really key portions is nurses are supposed to provide the appropriate type of care for that patient. If that patient is always violent, I don't care if it's a disorder, a delusion, trauma, whatever the thing is that's causing them to be violent, there's still a patient with which we're supposed to figure out how to care for. So technically, you are not letting us be nurses. You're not letting us be providers, healthcare workers. You're not letting us get to the patient behind the behavior. You're just saying we don't tolerate the behavior and that's it. But that's not at all how we cure people or heal people or foster a place of safety. And honestly, those people that have either been traumatized to the point where they're violent or have criminal history because they have antisocial behavior and they don't trust authority, those are the type of people that need even more love and even more care and even more negotiation and higher and stronger levels of communication. That is the opposite of limit setting. Like, we don't need to put up walls with these people. We need to allow them to understand the norms, the social norms that they're unable to meet in that moment. And we need to either medicate them. We need to get them to the appropriate care centers and sites. We need to get them the appropriate help. But telling them that the behavior is just not acceptable is not appropriate. And for the patients and family members that don't have a psych history, aren't ill, are just frustrated with the system and are angry and are being uncivil, having a zero tolerance policy does not help your brand, does not help your customer service, does not help all of the things that ultimately make your organization profitable. So you still have to manage those people because those people are still going to come in and try and visit. So the best way to do that is through, again, better conflict negotiation, better customer service, better system optimization so that they aren't as frustrated with what's going on. And by having a zero tolerance policy, you are basically saying we don't tolerate get out of our building, but we're not willing to fix any of the issues that have caused the cascade of frustration and events to fall on the back of a nurse who just comes in the room and says the wrong thing to the wrong person. And now she's getting her face hit. But it's really because it's been 12, 14 hours that the mother or whoever is in the situation has been waiting downstairs in the ER because we have systems issues and workflow issues and workforce issues and other issues in the organization that are causing the violence. And I think that's where, when we look at analysis of the event, instead of saying we don't tolerate it and saying this happened and it's unfortunate, how can we make it better? You have an opportunity to look at your systems and to try and create, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be an overhaul of the system. It may have just been a lack of communication between one department and another. Like, usually there are some really simple things that you can do to mitigate that and prevent that from happening in the future. And you don't have an angry customer anymore.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I can't think of many examples of effectiveness where you have a person, a flesh and blood human being that's in a heightened state of arousal, where giving them an ultimatum is the most effective intervention. Now you say, oh, well, no, Dean, we must have boundaries. Yeah, it's all the time in mental health nursing. Boundaries and consequences. Brilliant. In a mental health setting. Fantastic. Great idea. Like, I think about hostage negotiations.
That's why I brought up Voss in that article. I said, Voss, if you want to understand good conflict negotiation, here's a thought leader on it. It's not just Mel coming off the top saying this is how you should do shit. It's because I've looked to the best people in the world that do this every day and negotiate for people's children's, for people's lives, for people's money, for people's whatever. That's high stakes negotiation. And they would never say, well, I will tolerate this.
No. So this is your last chance to release the hostages or we're coming in. I'm not a hostage. Like, that's not, we won't tolerate your demands anymore. I'm not entirely sure that's so you say, all right, what about a less dramatic approach, Dean? You're so flamboyantly British with your extremities of examples. What about a business deal negotiation? You're trying to get a multi-million pounds or multi-million-dollar deal done with someone, and the negotiations are going okay, but they kind of stall. Well, probably not a great idea to offer an ultimatum. You know what, Mel? If you want to get this deal done, take it or leave it right now. Any more delay won't be tolerated. It's unlikely that you and I are going to be business partners in this. Well, let's say, well, they're two really extreme examples still, Dean. Well, what about with your children and poor behavior at home? Not something you would experience, but something I've dabbled in with the past.
He says that because I have 3 boys, 10 and under, and it's just chaos. Like, what happened? I don't know what I was on a call with you the other day and something severe happened. I don't know. I probably screamed because half the time they're bringing bugs or whatever they can get away with, they will try to get, and they're home for the summer. Yesterday, Noah said, he's like, Mom, I'm bored. Can I go back to school? I was like, please find somewhere for you to go. Like, somewhere, anywhere.
Do you remember the call we had with a mutual client last week where all 3 of us had stuff going on with children at the exact same time? And it was like the Teams call was really like a crowd of people all across the world just causing chaos.
And then your kid's like, hey, what's your Roblox? Are you playing Roblox? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, and your kid's all British. And my kid, oh, you hear his accent? And then all of a sudden it's like, Atlantic Roblox. And now they're all playing Roblox
That's
together.
what good nurses do. They bring people together. But so you think, right, with your children, say you've got a behavior, and I'm not talking about they're setting fire to the house, but I'm saying that they're pushing it. You know, they're being, again, they know if you say to them, right, if I have to tell you to be quiet one more time, you're going to go and live with grandma. They know that's not true. Like, I won't tolerate this bad behavior anymore. They're like, cool, because they understand that you have a responsibility that you can't just abstain from. That even children understand that there's a certain degree of bluffing in all of this. So if you make these ultimatums, it doesn't work.
I tell nurses all the time, that is how that aggression starts, right? Like when the first time they make a snarky comment to you, the first time they roll their eyes at you, the first time they say something demeaning to you, that's not going to be the last time, and they've said it to other people. So,
you've been married before, have you?
You have to learn how to navigate. My favorite thing to do, honestly, and I'll tell you this, like I treat them like no sir, may not, no thank you. And usually no thank you and a pause and a look is enough for people to be like, and it's a polite no thank you, sir. And I've established that I hear you, what you're saying. Now, and then after that, I may give a redirecting comment like, can I please get your lab now? Or whatever the thing is that we're going to move towards a care goal. But I don't spend time telling Joe that he shouldn't talk to me like that because Joe doesn't care if Joe's going to go ahead and talk to me like that. And that's the portion of zero tolerance policies don't take into effect, is a core concept of policing and criminality that, like Jeff Cooper says, the judge does, or the criminal does not fear the judge, jury, or the jail cell. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it, and they don't care. So those type of people that are being incivil and are rude, and those type of people that zero tolerance they think is going to affect upon, it's not going to make a difference. And I think the portion of it that I've heard in defense of zero tolerance is that, well, it just means that we're not going to acknowledge it, or we're not going to allow it, or we're not going to allow people to act that way with no repercussions. Okay, that's fair, but you also have to take into approach of what that tolerance means. And the zero means null or nothing. You're never going
it's very specific.
Right. You're never going to create zero within your organization as long as you're caring for people. So you automatically set yourself up to not meet that policy or to not meet that recommendation. That's never going to happen. And as someone who literally spends their entire life's work trying to reduce violence, don't you think that I would love for it to be that there were no more incidents? Of course I would love that. But it's doing a disservice to the nurses in promising them that they're going to have an environment where that exists instead of giving them the tools to be able to manage and identify violence, to get themselves to safety, and also if they have to deal with the violence, to do it very well. And I think that's the portion that you talk about all the time in the mental health setting, is that you would like for your staff, if they are going to have to experience violence, which you know they may because of the nature of mental health, that they're well prepared, well trained, and well equipped to be able to do that. And I think that is a better strategy, and a lot of strategies that really good security directors take towards this approach is because they know that security isn't the absence of threat. It's the ability to identify the threat and come up with an offensive, defensive, and stability strategy to manage those threats.
Yeah. I think I always come back to, I'm very much I'm a relatively academic person. I spent a lot of my adult life in higher education. Almost all of it I've self-funded. So my point is I've never been forced into it as part of my career. I've opted. But I only care about stuff that's rooted in reality. I take these things, whether it be the law for my master's in law, whether it be my certificate in mental health law, even American studies, I only care about the stuff that I can take that knowledge and then apply it to the moving parts of the human condition or of life or of society. What I think about when I see an organization say zero tolerance, I think, well, that's so starkly the opposite of the models we actually use to manage challenging behavior. So if you look at the RAID model, for example, developed by Dr. William Davies, that is all about downplaying and ignoring disruptive behavior while ever it's safe to do so, and only recognizing appropriate behavior and making that be the focal point so that it eventually displaces disruptive behavior. So you recognize appropriate, improve destructive.
Yep, and that's how I raised my autistic son. Because
I would imagine so, yeah.
Diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder. So it was like every time I would tell him no, and one of the reasons why I use that term may not when I parent my children is because I know that if I tell them no, they're just going to come back and we're just going to escalate back and forth, and it's this type of personality. So I reward good behavior and only discipline behaviors that were harmful, right? So I think that that's a key element of positive messaging, enhancing your brand. And then I think as the American Nurses Association moves to want more membership, to want more inclusion, like by taking that approach, you're causing some of the distrust. You have a zero tolerance approach when all of the nurses at the bedside are experiencing massive rates of violence. So you're basically saying, I don't identify at all with what's going on at the bedside. And it almost feels patronizing. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all towards the American Nurses Association. I am a huge proponent of joining your organizational bodies. I think that it's so important. I think that, people are popping up with different coalitions and all these commissions and blah, blah, blah. I think that that's great, but it's like, what initiative are we positioned on together? And can we move forward with messaging that's evidence-based? So if I look at stuff that's evidence-based, zero tolerance is not evidence-based at all. In fact, the evidence from the United Kingdom and other places where they've tried to enact these type of policies years and years ago actually shows the inverse. So it shows that as a profession, we are not looking at research, which is something that the ANA claims, right? So we're not looking at research. We're not looking at security foundations. I know that they do have Eric Clay, the president of the IHSS, involved in some of their decision-making stuff. But again, he's one personality or one authority in a vast network of people. So, he gives his expertise in a high level, but he's not going to change the strategy of a nursing organization. Like, even if he were to say, I don't agree with zero tolerance, it's not his place to say that. He's an expert in security and, the things that he's experienced in. So he's giving that expert opinion. It's voices of nurses that should say, hey, I have experience in security as well as patient care. I'm still active at the bedside. The majority of the people that wrote that document, I guarantee you, are not still taking care of patients. So that's where I'm able to say, hey, this is my opinion. And I'm grateful that they did a call for interest. And, I had a couple other nurses message me saying, hey, I'm going to use your article or your research as a reference when I respond, because I don't think zero tolerance is a good idea either. And I'm sure that it will make no significant difference. They'll publish the document and it'll be whatever. But I hope it helps organizations to understand from a business perspective why zero tolerance is not a good idea, because, from a stability initiative, an offensive initiative, it just doesn't make sense. And even from a defensive perspective, it doesn't make sense. You're not enhancing the safety or the experience of your staff, who now are your major customer, right? Because retention is a huge issue. So you're not enhancing that. You're not enhancing the patient safety aspect. You're not enhancing the customer service aspect. So why are we putting in policies just because they're popular when we should be putting in policies because they're profitable?
I agree. I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. I think we've emptied the notepad on why we have no tolerance for zero tolerance approaches, and hopefully we've shared a few ideas of things that we can work. Hopefully
my recommendations for organizations would be an incident towards zero incidences policy. And then a pathway. And anytime you have an incident, make sure that you have a protocol or response for that type of incident. And then empowering the staff with better training to identify the indicators of violence. And honestly, if you haven't a teaching program that's out there right now, and your incident rates are still climbing, and you're not having any good reduction in incidents, then you might want to look at getting a different training program. Because it just might not be the right training program for your organization. And we are happy to connect you with lots of different training programs and different initiatives, whether it's PPE, whether it's, restraint systems, whether it's protocol and policy that you need. But we're happy to help connect organizations to other options from zero tolerance that exist.
Well said. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, found it helpful. Please share it, like it, rate and review. Get in touch with us. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you dislike. Happy to have that feedback. Until next time, thank you for listening.